Welcome to the Pitch of Discontent. Owen back again for another guest episode. Very excited for this one. We have the lovely Allison in the house. Hello, Allison.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Thank you very much for coming in to do this. You are a person who I've wanted to have on the show for a long time. I'm excited to pick your brains and talk about all things Pulse and all of the interesting stuff that you're working on. But rather than me doing all the talking there, could you introduce yourself for our watchers and listeners, who you are, what you do?
My name is Allison. I run Pulse the Zine from Naarm. It's a printed zine which features interviews with women and non-binary people across Australia, across the music scene, with a few internationals in there. I run Pulse.
Yep. And I think there's various elements to Pulse that we will kind of get into and unpack. Like, it's not just a zine. You're obviously like contributing to other people's shows, putting on your own shows. You're a fixture in the Naarm scene. So I want to kind of pull apart at all of that. But I guess to kick things off, you and I only met in person for the first time last Friday. And when people watch this, that'll be like several weeks ago, but you didn't need to know the details. But we were at the Koyo show, which was dope.
It was.
You were slinging merch, you were selling t-shirts. How was the show for you as someone who was working?
Yeah, it was good. Everyone was really nice. It was thankfully delayed a little bit, so like a lot more people came in by the time the bands were playing, which was good.
Yes.
It
picked up awesome. Considerably before Secret World played.
Yeah, Secret World were my favourite. They were
great.
So impressive. Good six-piece. Yeah.
Good Sydney energy.
Yeah, exactly. The show was good. Koyo were really happy with it. They were lovely. They were enjoying Australia, which is always what I enjoy talking to the bands about the most, because I like Australia and the culture. So yeah, it was a good show. It was nice to meet you. It was nice
Finally. To meet you. I didn't want to talk your ear off. I kind of just wanted to say hello, because obviously we've been setting this up through the Instagram DMs, and I was like, all right, I don't want to be a weirdo and not say hello, because I can see that Allison's over there, so I'll just introduce myself. And then I got all in my head and I was like, don't be a punish. She's working. She's got shit to do. So just say hello and get out of there and buy some shirts, which I did.
I love punishes. It's so fun.
It's a very conscious thing. You're like, I don't know. You meet so many people I meet so many people doing this pod and people in the music industry that you just you never want to be a punish. You know what I mean? You just want to let people go about their day and just be a human. You know what I mean?
You never know if you're being a punish or if you're just being a friend.
Yes,
it's
exactly.
a hard line to walk.
It's a thin line, yes. How did you get into working merch and kind of doing crew stuff at shows?
I don't know. I don't know when my first one was. I think it was just something that I picked up over time. I can't remember which one was my first show. I'd been kind of doing it with friends, like with Jase, Holfritter and stuff like that for a little bit. And then over time kind of started doing them solo, which was nice.
Okay.
And then now it's just a thing that I do kind of as a second job, maybe a few a week. Sometimes I go a few weeks without it.
Yeah.
But no, it's good. Just kind of having that second stream of income, and it's nice to meet everyone. Most of the time I'm just at the forum, but every now and then I get to go somewhere different, which is nice. And thankfully it's something that kind of I got into as well through Mars, who's in Pulse. So thankfully for her, she kind of hooked me up with some of them as well. And now there's just a little merch collective that we kind of if we can't work it, we'll kind of recommend the next person and things like that.
It's good to see that I don't know, the involvement that you have in shows is something that you can kind of just pick up whenever you want. I know for people, and I've met many people in the past who that is their only source of income.
Yeah.
And that is a very tenuous kind of existence to have. Because for COVID, for example, there was a period where there were no shows for years at a time. So people doing that as a full-time income are really kind of grinding it out. And we were kind of talking off mic about your day job. So you've obviously got other income, not just Pulse, thankfully. So I don't know, that's good. And do you find that you enjoy going to shows, I guess, outside of just being a punter? Being behind the curtain, so to speak, and kind of seeing how things run? Is that something that interests you?
Yeah, that's kind of where Pulse kind of came from as well. I kind of really like the behind the scenes, and the more that I kind of try different roles. I just kind of discover more and more that I like about it. And, you know, you kind of meet people that are not maybe audience facing or front facing. And they're usually quite a lot of the people that kind of hold the scene down and kind of actually put in quite a lot of the work. So it's nice to kind of see more representation or more people in different kind of roles. And merch is just one of those things that, you know, just after I did the first one, I was like, I want to do this. So it's been fun.
This will kind of naturally feed into our discussion as we go along, because one of the main reasons that I have you on the show for this episode is because you have your own show that you're working in collaboration with some other people, which we will get into. But I would imagine like working other people's shows gives you an insight into how they operate, the things that work well, the things that don't, the things that could be improved. And naturally, you're going to take that in and try and do that with your own shows.
Yeah, exactly. It's just kind of one of those things that, you know, as you do more and more, you learn more about, you know, maybe TMing or merch or even driving or photography or things like that. And when I kind of started out, I didn't know what parts I would enjoy working in and what parts I wouldn't. So I was never kind of someone to say no to anything.
Yeah.
And then this just kind of became like a full-time thing, and it's just kind of picked up from there. But
yeah, that's awesome.
yeah, I really enjoy it, and I love meeting people and chatting shit. So that's kind of like my favorite thing ever. And merch, thankfully, they have to come to me, so it's great.
Yeah, perfect. I guess before we get into the nitty gritty about all the stuff that you're working on and your various projects, I wanted to kind of get a little bit of info about Allison, the person. So I'm going to do that cliche thing about, you know, tell me about your childhood. And I want to focus.
Heavy question.
It's a loaded question, but I want to focus on music. So obviously you found your way into heavy music and into hardcore and various shows of that ilk. But how did you find your initial connection to music in your childhood? Was it a parent? Was it, you know, the heavy metal uncle? Like how?
Older brother.
Older brother? Okay.
Yeah.
Tell me more about that.
I just remember hearing a lot of System of a Down growing up,
Sick.
Which was kind of the first band that I kind of got into. He would just listen to it on repeat and I would sing along, and, you know, there's quite a lot of songs like Vicinity or whatever where I would like sing along and he'd be like, you should not be singing along to that, like around the parents. And then he had like some friends over for a party one night, and I remember I was sitting like watching YouTube, and like I was kind of mixing between System of a Down and like Lady Gaga because I was still like in my normie phase kind of thing. And one of his friends walked down the stairs and was like, have you heard Slipknot? And I was like, nah. And I just put Psychosocial on or something. I think it might have been Spit It Out or something. And I just listened to it and I was like, yeah, this is it. And then
I feel like if you're already primed with System of a Down, Slipknot is a very easy transition.
Yeah.
You can slip right in there.
Yeah, absolutely. I liked the weirdness of System of a Down and like Scars on Broadway and stuff like that. But something about Slipknot, I was just like, there's 9 of them and they're all useless, but I love them. So
I feel like, I don't know, System of a Down is like so politically loaded, and there's so much going on there with their like Armenian heritage and the weird like folk music elements and stuff in there. So like they're an eclectic, offbeat choice. But Slipknot are just like white trash kids from the Midwest who are pissed about stuff.
Absolutely.
So it becomes like a little bit more immediate and perhaps relatable for someone in their youth to be like, oh yeah, word, this works.
True. I kind of grew up in a very political family.
Okay.
My parents ran Sea Shepherd for quite some time. So
wow. Okay.
it was something that was kind of like not a choice. Like we would go to protests every week and go to beach cleanups and stuff as a family. So I think System of a Down was something that they were like, that's fine. But they weren't ever like against it. My mother took me to like a Live the band. I was in a mosh pit when I was like 8 and we got kicked out because I was on her shoulders. So
that's incredible.
I think I was,
your mum rocks.
Doomed from
that's sick. My mum took me to a Kylie Minogue concert when I was like 10 with my aunt.
I did see Delta 2. That was life-changing.
Nice.
But yeah, it was just kind of like, it wasn't an issue. Like, if anything, they were just like sick. So
yeah, that's awesome. What was it like growing up in a like politically active kind of household? Because I don't know, that's not something that I think everyone has.
Yeah. It was a very unique environment, that's for sure. Having kind of like politics being something that is not like a choice, but something that is a duty, I guess. Was something that I grappled with and really enjoyed as a teenager. And then as I kind of got older, I was like, what opinions are mine, and what do I believe in, and what do I believe activism is? So it was very different. I didn't realize until I kind of grew older that not everyone grew up like that.
Yeah.
Joke mine happiness. It is so much on you. You can follow. Struggle day to day.
It's just like an embedded thing. Like I didn't really think that people didn't do those kinds of things growing up, and then I got older and I was like, oh, I can just have fun.
Yeah, wow.
So I kind of had a fun phase, which I guess was rebellious. So then
that was your act of rebellion, like just not caring for like a couple of years. And your parents are like, please, Allison, please care.
Come to this beach cleanup. So yeah, it was just something that I was always surrounded with. But, it's good because heavy music is kind of inherently political. So as I kind of moved away from like metal, I guess, like Slipknot, and I started finding like bands like Have Heart or Rebirth or even like Incendiary and stuff now, I kind of get how it's like they're kind of combined. A lot of people maybe don't see heavy that way, but for me it's like that's what it is.
I mean, for a lot of people, heavy music is just like a fun thing. It's a very kind of like surface level catharsis, just like a way to kind of blow off steam or whatever. And like I feel like that's fine and valid. Like you can definitely enjoy music for those aesthetic kind of properties.
Oh, absolutely.
But yeah, you do, a lot, like a tiny little bit of research into a lot of those bands, particularly like the core bands, and you start to see a lot of countercultural tendencies, political activism, veganism, things like that run through all of those different movements, and you can kind of see like how those things formed over time with all of the cultural movements that were happening in the background, right? So
100%.
Yeah. I guess like that was kind of my next point. So like when did you decide that like punk and hardcore was something that you were into? And do you remember your first like hardcore show?
It was quite early on. I remember maybe like the era of like 2008, 2009. Okay. I really enjoyed going to shows then. And obviously, thankfully, in that time, there were people like Ashhole running like all ages shows every 5 minutes. So I wasn't short of choice. But I can't remember my exact first show, but I remember a lot of them were House vs. Hurricane from Bayswater. I loved them. I remember going to like Defeater and Blacklisted at like Bayswater TLC.
I remember that tour. Huge tour.
So good with Heights, I think. Just kind of like that era. I remember seeing like, North Lane support House vs. Hurricane at like Evie's Croydon and shit like that. So
that's wild to think that North Lane were doing supports for House vs. Hurricane.
Yeah, they only had, I think, their first EP at that time, and I was like, this is dope.
Yeah. I think I saw them play like as openers on a tour. And they would have just had the EP, like Discoveries hadn't even come out.
Yeah, so, Metamorphosis.
So it was like it was like a completely different band almost and a different kind of sound. But yeah, like everyone has to start somewhere. And I have a soft spot for that House vs. Hurricane EP, the first one. So good. That film clip where they're like in the snow. I watched that the other day and it's on YouTube in like 480p. It's beautiful.
They were honestly the best. Like if I could bring back a band, I would just be like, straight up House vs. Hurricane.
Sick. I love that.
Like Soundwave and stuff. I think I remember going to like 2010 and then every year onwards. So, because like Sea Shepherd was also there. So my mum would like drive and we would set up Sea Shepherd and then I'd be like, bye.
And you're like, I just want to go to like enjoy myself. And your mum's like, no, this is work. This is where we reach the youth.
Literally, yeah. But it was good. She was always really supportive and I'd watch The Stall while she went off and watched like 30 Seconds to Mars and stuff and then come back.
Awesome.
So.
That's so sick. Okay, well, let's kind of run through that process then. So you're going to shows, you're obviously meeting people at shows, you're making connections. At what point do you start to think like, I should contribute and or give back to this? And how does that impulse become Pulse? And that wasn't a pun, but I
It was a
realized
pun.
it's kind of a pun. I'm gonna leave it in. I'm
beautiful.
gonna leave it in.
It actually didn't start for quite some time. I think I was just a punter for a really long time. And
Yeah.
to be honest, that's kind of what Pulse was about in a way that, and it is something that I kind of like I'm trying to work towards with future issues as well, that there is kind of this stigma sometimes that that being a punter is not enough.
Yes.
Like you meet people and they're like, oh, I'm doing this and I'm doing this. And it's just like, oh, well, I don't do anything. And there's this kind of like, oh. And that was something that I kind of wanted to kill with what I was doing with Pulse, that like if you're not in a band, it doesn't matter. Like everyone contributes in a different way. And to be honest, the people that buy tickets and buy merch are the people that are holding it down.
I was just about to say, I was like, none of the bands that we've mentioned would be anywhere without the people who buy tickets and buy merch and go to shows. So like, if anything, they're the lifeblood of everything.
Yeah, 100%. Like they do say that like fangirls and stuff like that run the industry, and I do think it's definitely like that. But for me, like when I was kind of doing my research for it, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't know if I wanted to be media or in a band or anything like that. And, you know, starting a band just off your own as a female was something that I was like so far out of my reach. So I kind of just researched more. Then as I started researching, I was like, I like this. I like researching people, and, you know, you would be the exact same. Sometimes like the investigative process is like
It's the best part.
Yeah, I love it.
Getting ready for the pod is sometimes better than the actual pod itself.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's a bit creepy sometimes when you're like going through like everything about them on the internet, but like I quite like that investigative process. I guess I did it quite a bit at uni. So I was just like, yep. Like, I'm happy with this. And then
so this is something I want to dig into because we were talking about this off mic, but I listened to a previous podcast that you did, the Backbeat podcast in February, and you talked about this process a little bit, and you specifically used the word research, and that kind of like got my interest kind of peaked a little bit because it seems a little bit, maybe not counterintuitive is the wrong word, but a little bit odd for someone to describe doing research before doing like a punk zine. So, but I think that's an interesting thing. So like, you mentioned you went to uni.
Mm-hmm.
What did you study?
I studied law.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a fairly intensive, got to hit the books type degree.
I love reading.
Yeah. Okay. So why did you feel it was necessary to do research around, I guess, all of these issues, around zines, around art? Like, why did you feel like you needed to like brush up on your reading before you could do the thing? Because a lot of people would just say, fuck that, do the thing. Like you don't need a knowledge or a skill set. All you need is the passion. And for a lot of people, it's like, you know, don't learn music, just start a band. So like you've kind of gone the other way. Yeah. I want to know why.
I don't know. I think it's just kind of a bit of who I am. Like I'm the kind of person that like if I want to understand something, I need to know everything about it to kind of get to the bottom of it.
I believe they call that a type A personality.
I was looking at that the other day and I was like, I wonder what I am, but I'll save that for later. But like, I don't know. I like knowing everything. I like being like fully equipped with the right things. And then like, you know, I didn't want to, with something as important as, I guess, other people's stories as well as interviews and like getting to know these people, I didn't want to go into it and not understand the discourse that I was kind of injecting myself into. So, you know, I researched everything about zines and, you know, bought every zine in the scene that I could find and, you know, read through them and picked apart what I liked and what I didn't like and what resonated with me. And then, you know, started reading a lot about feminist literature and different languages on how to speak about, you know, these kinds of issues with taste and without, I guess, tokenizing it or making it something that I didn't want it to be. And so I just kind of kept reading and reading. And then originally it wasn't even going to be a zine. I don't even know what it was, but I was like, it was something that I discovered later when I just kind of started typing it all out. And I was like, oh, I like the written format quite a lot more. It's just kind of like who I am. I think I'm just a sticky beak.
A little nosy.
Yeah, literally. I don't know. I just kept researching and then when I felt like I was ready to kind of send the interviews out, I did and hoped for the best. I'm very thankful that everyone said yes.
What was that process like? So you go from the market research phase, you kind of figure out where the gaps are, how to kind of fill those kind of gaps and niches appropriately. You come up with the concept, then you're sending out pitches to people. What was that process like? Were you anxious? Were you like, will anyone give a shit? Like,
yeah, I kind of had this thing where I just told myself if I didn't like it, I didn't have to release it. And I just kind of told myself through the whole thing, I was like, this is for me. Like, it's never going to go public.
Yeah.
So I never had that like kind of perception bias. And every time that kind of came around, I would just tell myself the same thing again. Like, oh, it's not for anyone. It's never going to be readable. But like I kind of researched every guest for like 2 months or something. And then
crazy.
It was honestly like I didn't want to miss anything. And like I think if anyone who's in Pulse, if like I've Googled their name with their band, I've Googled everything, and every single prompt I've read. Like I just didn't want to ask anyone something that they've been asked about before, and I wanted to make sure that, you know, sometimes, you know, like you would be the exact same. You watch interviews and you can tell where people are wanting to talk about a certain subject, and we know what's a passion project or something like that, and that's kind of where you be like, oh, I want to get into that part. So, you know, I'm sure you're very much the same. Like you just kind of have that spark, and you're just like, oh, I'll just keep researching that, and then I'll talk to them about that. And yeah.
I mean, I've been doing music journalism for years, too long, and I've been doing this podcast now for like nearly 3 years, and I think that's definitely a part that maybe some people miss or underestimate, is that like you do need to put in some time and some research into the artist, to the band, to their backstory.
Yeah.
And doing that allows you to have a kind of depth in conversation that you're not going to get from just like the press release.
Absolutely.
You know, and no shade to my publicist friends, but like they're directing a very specific brief to a very specific audience.
Yeah.
But that's not necessarily a general audience. It certainly might not be the audience that you want for Pulse or for this podcast. So like reading around, and you would have found this studying law, and I certainly did studying literature and philosophy, is like you have to read around the subject to find, you know, people who disagree with it, people who think it's a crock of shit, and find all the different perspectives to then kind of figure out where the interesting kind of thing is.
100%. Yeah. And press is only like a small, I guess, moment in time.
Yes.
Yeah. Like you're talking about a particular tour or a particular time of the band, and for me it wasn't just also about like what band they're in, but it's like them, and you know, they may be in another band in 5 years, but they'll still resonate with
they're still the artist.
Identity.
Exactly.
The band is ever changing, if anything.
Yeah. In the process for the first issue of Pulse, issue 1, was there anything that came up in those initial interviews to kind of like put together the first issue that steered it in a direction that you didn't anticipate, or anything that kind of shocked you? Because as we've kind of discussed, like you've done all this research, you want to know all the things, you want, I would imagine, to not really be surprised.
Yes, yeah, maybe that's what it is, anxiety.
But I've done this enough to know that often happens.
Yeah.
And you will get weird and wonderful things that come up in interviews. So did anything kind of change what you thought Pulse was going to be?
Not really, to be honest. There was definitely quite a lot of differences between issue 1 and issue 2. Like there were a lot of things that when I was creating issue 1, I was like, this is not possible. Let's just, you know, sideline that, and that'll be an issue 2 thing. And then when I was making issue 2, there's like, oh shit, I can't do this. I'll have to do this for the next one, kind of thing. The only thing that was, and I don't particularly want to get into negatives, but like the only thing that was a bit shocking, and Emma actually speaks about this in her interview a bit, is that the only kind of resistance that I really had came from fellow female friends. So it was something that I wasn't anticipating, like a pushback from a direction that maybe I hadn't anticipated. So it was kind of navigating that, and everyone's experience as a non-male is important, and pushback is also important, because not everybody wants to be kind of, you know, a spokesperson or a role model, or, you know, you discuss these things quite often on your podcast. Like not everyone is fully prepared for that or wants to kind of bear that responsibility. So it was about making sure that, you know, people weren't feeling tokenized or just like, oh, you're in this because you're a woman. It's like, no, you're in this because, you know, I read this about you or I listened to this music and I love it kind of thing. So it was about kind of navigating everyone's own experience of empowerment because everyone is empowered by different things. So
Yeah. I think that's a really kind of powerful insight and an interesting thing too, because like I've seen it come up in discourse for years and years and years now about, you know, like representation on shows, festival lineups, and, you know, particularly in music journalism, like press coverage is definitely skewed in a particular way, right? So like having other voices represented is incredibly important, but at the same time, like it can very easily slip into that tokenistic framing of just like, oh, you know, we need to get the quota up, need to get those numbers up, got to find some women in bands, like, let's go. And like, I hate that shit because like you can see it a mile away and you can tell that like it's not necessarily because of the art that they're creating, which is ultimately what it should be about. But like you should definitely have both perspectives at play all the time.
Yeah.
How do you counter that tokenism? Like out of the stuff that you read, all the knowledge that you gained, what kind of lessons and learnings did you take away from that to make Pulse as not that sort of stuff as possible?
Well, I guess I'm also always still learning. Like,
of course,
you know, there's definitely there's always room for improvement and things like that. For me, it was just about adapting the interview or the process to the particular person. So if anyone was like, oh, I don't want to answer this question or I don't want to talk about this topic, it was, making sure that I'm meeting their needs and not like being like, this is my idea of the zine. This is where you have to fit into my brief. It was just like, I don't care. Like, I'm here to tell your story. It's not about me. Like, some people had questions that they were like, I can't answer this or I don't want to or things like that. And that's okay. It was just making sure that everyone felt happy with what they were giving me and that they were happy to be, I guess, like associated or alongside. You know, you may have people that you know, have podcasts with and they're like, I hate my episode or something. And that, like, that's okay. Even though it sucks. Like, it sucks that that's your partnership and that's what's happened from it. But, you know, just making sure that everyone felt okay. And I guess just always still learning, always listening to people when they talk about what their preferences are and what they want and not the idea of what I had in my head or something like that. But thankfully it's been a very positive journey, but, you know, with everything there's resistance and time to grow. So
yeah, I completely agree. I can definitely relate to that with the podcast journey. I think the point that you said there about really listening to other people and kind of letting them tell their story rather than you trying to tell it for them, which in print is kind of difficult and you can definitely run into that. In the podcast format, it's slightly different, but I recently went to Big Sound up in Queensland and I was part of a writers like networking lab, mentoring kind of thing, the Music Writers Lab. And thank you for paying for me to go there and do that. That was great. Thank you. Shout out Music NT. But as part of that, I had to do like a little presentation, which was kind of a little bit daunting, but it was like a small group, so it was fine. But it was like, you know, talk about your experience being like a music writer or whatever. And I kind of sat there and I was like, what are the three kind of like takeaways that I want to impart on like the next generation of like music writers? That was genuinely like a thing that I had to sit and kind of think about because like the gut impulse was like, don't do it. Like, there's no jobs. He won't make any money and it's hard. And like, you're really going to have to grind at it. So like, I didn't want to hit the negatives, but I came away from like highlighting three writers that I really respect, and that I turn to and read their work often, and then kind of takeaways from like specific pieces that they had written. And the reason I'm telling this long anecdote is because like one of those was like, just shut the fuck up and like practice active listening and just let your subject speak. And, you know, I do prep notes for every episode. I do bullet points. I usually don't hit all of them because I find that the organic conversation is usually much more rich and interesting, and there'll be tangents and there'll be funny anecdotes and things that are going to yield a much more interesting, I would hope, episode than like me being like, okay, well now we need to talk about this. So tell me about this. You know what I mean?
Less
like
sanitary kind of thing.
Exactly.
You're quite good at it, don't worry.
Thank you. Tooting the horn here. But what's your process like when you're interviewing someone for Pulse?
It's all written, so it's not verbal in any way. That's kind of an option. Like I kind of send out like a welcome, like hello, like thank you for being a part of this. You'll get questions in a little bit, and it's kind of like a briefing, and then it's 5 questions. And I just kind of like I obviously spend quite a bit of time on the phrasing of them and things like that. For me, it's like every question is different. So like a different point of contention or what I want to talk to them about. So like Tanny from Northgate or from Venues, which I have an issue to, she's obsessed with Rancid. So I listened to every Rancid song and every interview with Rancid. And I was just like, I don't know anything about Rancid, but I wanted to know about Rancid so that I could understand having that conversation with her.
And did you recognize that that's going to be like a fairly integral thing to understanding her, right?
Yeah,
and
exactly.
being able to get into what makes her tick and why she does what she does. So
yeah, and like where that passion comes from. Like Alex reads philosophy, like quite like you as well. You're both big philosophy heads, and she reads quite a lot of that and a lot of discipline books. So I, you know, for the months that I was researching her, if she screenshot a book and put it up, I'd be like, oh, I screenshot that, and I went and bought the book and read the bloody book, and I was just like, why am I doing this? But like all of them.
You're showing me up here with your attention to detail. It's quite intimidating.
I think it's a bit creepy, if anything. It was more like, if anything, quite selfish in the way that like I admired all of these women for different things, and I knew that it wasn't just, you know, like the band that they're in or the song that they've released. It was how they carry themselves and what they bring to the scene. They were all people that I was like a super big fan of. So I was like, well, I have something to learn from all of them. So whatever it may be, whatever interests there are, even movies or things like that, I would kind of know that if I followed that path, I would absorb those kinds of things and, you know, become a better version of myself. And like, I have quite a lot of them to thank for, you know, the music and the movies that I enjoy, or like, you know, Emily from Volatile Ways listens to quite a lot of like Megan Thee Stallion and stuff like that. Didn't hear it before, listened to it, and now I'm like such a huge fan. So like, you know, I just kind of like took a little piece of all their things that they enjoyed, and now I'm very thankful because it's part of me. But I just knew that if I followed that path that I would find what I wanted to talk to them about. And it was also just like, reading what was online and not repeating themselves, because sometimes it's definitely not the case with this podcast, but sometimes when you watch interviews and stuff like that, they're getting asked like the same 4 or 5 questions about every single thing. I think I saw Nikki Bruman talk about like the same 3 or 4 experiences or events in the same different interviews and stuff like that. And I was like, I don't want it to feel like that. I want them to feel seen. So it was about finding what they wanted to talk about and were interested in, and kind of going into that rather than just making it about what I wanted to hear. If that
totally.
Sense.
No, that makes complete sense. And I often kind of pride myself on doing the exact same thing with this show, because I feel like there is really a space for that, because there is so much like, you know, just standard press junket sort of stuff, and like all of that has its place.
Absolutely.
Again, no shade to my publicist friends. That's very valid work. But like I don't need to do that with this project, right? I'm more interested in kind of getting into like weird and wonderful conversations and learning something new myself. And I completely resonate with what you said about taking something away from every guest. Like, this podcast started as a playlist show, and it was basically an excuse for me to like hit up people that I knew in bands or bands that I really respect and admire and be like, make me a playlist
Cool though.
of shit that you like.
Yeah.
And then I'll give you a platform to talk about it. And then I've got a playlist that you made. And that's sick.
And I don't have to think of my own music.
Yeah. And like I've done that for, lots of episodes, and we had to kind of switch things up when we moved to YouTube. But like that was such a cool part of, I don't know, like getting to know artists and finding cool records and cool bands that I had no prior knowledge of. And I was like, well, thank you to that person, because now I have a brand new band. And like I'm a big music nerd. I'm a bit of a snob. So I like finding obscure stuff. And I think that's like, I don't know. Anyone who knows me knows that my like love language is like playlists, and I will like make people a playlist, and I will send them recommendations, and I will constantly like push music onto them. So like to have someone do that for me and for the people watching and listening, it's the dream.
You do quite a lot on top of these though. Like I was having a little stalk today, and I was like reading your interviews and you have,
I'm
like,
honored that I was part of the
reviews.
stalking process. Thank you.
Well, I have to talk to you about you don't like Stephen King very much, which
I mean, I'm mixed on Stephen King.
that's okay.
One of my favorite books of all time is a Stephen King book, and probably my most hated book of all time is a Stephen King book.
I'm sure he feels the same.
He kind of does. One of the best books that I would recommend is Stephen King's On Writing.
Yeah, I heard you talking about that with
It's fantastic.
Cat. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, he wrote a book about writing. I've got to jot that down somewhere.
Yeah, and it's a fascinating insight into arguably one of the biggest and most influential authors of all time, and how he's just really just kind of like a regular guy. He's just like someone's crazy dad, but he just happens to be a guy who writes. But like he kind of says in On Writing that like part of his process is getting up every day and making sure that there's like 2,000 words on the page. He's like, they might be complete dog shit. He's like, but I will put 2,000 words on the page every single day.
Wow.
And then you look at his output and you can see like that's how he's so prolific, and that's how he writes so much. Now
And cocaine.
and the cocaine. I would personally say that puts his quality down somewhat.
Yeah, fair.
Because there's a lot of content coming out that way, but that's his process, and that's how he likes to work. I watched an interview with him. We're talking about Stephen King now. This is a Stephen King pod.
Sorry, I'm just you right.
No, you're right. I was watching an interview at like I think it was like a book writers society in Albuquerque, and he was one of the speakers, and George R.R. Martin was the other speaker, and it was super interesting because it was like arguably another one of the most influential, biggest writers of all time. And they couldn't be any more different. And like, they both like had like big respect for each other, but also were kind of just like, like
You're not my kind.
you're not my kind of writer. Like you're doing opposite things. So like, Stephen kind of talks about that, about like, I wake up every day and I just write all these words. And George is like, I will sit and stare at one sentence for days on end.
Yeah.
He's like, until it's perfect. And he's like, that's just my process.
What a crazy way to work.
And then you look at his output and you realize that's why he's taken fucking years to finish, like, Song of Ice and Fire. So like,
True.
that gives you insight into how different people work. And I mean, with music, it's much the same, right?
Yeah.
Like getting an insight into what makes people tick. To bring things back to Pulse, and we can get into more Stephen King later in the patreon.com/tpdpod.
Plug.
With Pulse, you have two issues. So you have the first issue, which was your trial, your proof of concept.
Yeah.
You iterated and improved things in issue 2. I assume there is issue 3. Coming? Big things coming soon?
Yeah.
Are you working on issue 3? Do you have plans for issue 3? What's next for Pulse?
I am working on it. The fest definitely took the creative juices and stuff like that for the last few months, and has actually been quite a lot of work. So we've been kind of focusing on that, which has been awesome. But after issue 2, I kind of took a few months off and kind of just wanted to see how I felt, and I'm kind of trying to find that creative spark again. Yeah. But the thing is, I remember when I was doing it that it was just like the best way out is through kind of thing. So I just feel like I need to do that again now. But I've been trying to find like, it's one of those things. Sometimes I'm one of those people where I'm like, oh, the perfect day, or like I'll, have the right meal and the right movie and sit down and that will be our work on it. But the thing is, it's like, it's not how it works. It's not
No.
how I created them. So I think I just need to throw myself back into it. But after kind of the rush of the second one and, you know, kind of getting everything done and, you know, going on tour with it afterwards and stuff like that, I just kind of, I needed a bit of a break and I took a bit of a break.
That's completely fair.
Yeah, I've been trying to do a lot more like reading and watching movies and stuff because that's kind of how I kind of get myself creative. So I think I just need to like keep doing that. But I have been working on it. I have been stalking people again. So I will be forming my interviews hopefully soon. But yeah, just kind of there are elements that I want to bring into the third one, like community members and stuff like that, punters, things like that, not just industry professionals and things like that. So trying to figure out what my cap is, I guess, because each one has 10 and I'm just like, oh, I'll do like 30, which is ridiculous. So just trying to figure out like how to include as many people as I want, collaborate with as many people as I want, highlight who I can without kind of biting off more than I can chew.
Yeah, that's fair.
Yeah.
To kind of like cap off the Pulse conversation before we get into the rest of the stuff, what was, I guess, like the biggest lesson that you learned taking it from an idea to like a physical thing holding in your hands? So I imagine the tactile production element is a whole other headache that we probably don't have to get into, but I'm sure you learned something out of that process of like going from the idea to the thing.
It's just never going to be perfect. I think that's what I kind of learned.
Preach.
Yeah.
Yeah. Perfectionism is like the first thing that you need to like get rid of with any kind of creative project, I think.
Absolutely.
I'm a guilty perfectionist.
I think anyone who's kind of creative, it's the same with making music. Like, you know, by the time I was ready to release it, it felt so old to me. It felt like I'd read it a million times. I was like, this is, you know, it's not as hard hitting as maybe I remembered it being the first time. And it's kind of just like remembering that it's fresh to other people and it's still new to other people. I feel the very same like when I make other creative things or music or things like that. Like it's not, you know, by the time you make an album or something, it's like, you know, you've been using it for 3 years, you've been listening to it for 3 years, you've been hearing 15 mixes. It's just like, by that point, you're like, oh my God, like I'm sick of it. But no one else has heard it yet. So
perspective is like a helpful thing.
Yeah. And also not slowing down at release and not slowing down when like it's not done. When it's out there, that's when like the hard work kind of comes in. Oh,
that's when you have to promote the thing.
Yeah,
you have to get people excited about the thing. You have to be a salesperson.
That's the hard part, definitely. Like I never imagined having my face included in anything. Like it's not in Pulse at all. So that was kind of another thing, was like getting comfortable with like selling it or being a spokesperson or doing things like this. Like I never wanted to be known, so it was a bit like, oh my God, how do I do this and still hide? So just learning how to navigate that. Yeah,
I can absolutely relate to that. Like taking our podcast from audio to video, that was a huge thing. I was like, do I want to be on camera?
Yeah.
Do I want people to look at me? Do I want to edit hours and hours and hours of footage of my face?
How would you? I could not do editing.
Probably not, but fuck it. I'm here. I'm doing it. So like, yeah, it's hard to kind of adjust to that and to be your own salesperson.
Yeah.
So I think there was a time, you know, many decades ago where musicians, artists, writers could get away with like having the cushy like job as a creative that didn't involve touching the marketing sales aspect of it. They were kind of divorced worlds.
Yeah.
No longer. So we've talked Pulse. Before we get into the fest and the most like current thing that you're working on, I wanted to kind of bridge that with a conversation on, I guess, being a woman in heavy music, because much of the like conceptual focus for Pulse is like, you know, women, non-binary people, non-males. So centering those kinds of conversations. What are you doing, buddy? There's no one in there. There's no one in there,
It's
buddy.
waste time.
Allison's over here.
Hi. You're the best. You're the star of the show.
He's so cute. It's like impossible to be mad at him.
Yeah, 100%.
It's crazy.
They do that. They be like that. Go get your
They do
ball.
be like that. All right, we'll just let Reese do his thing. Stop biting Allison. Yeah, the conceptual focus of Pulse has this kind of, you know, women, non-males, non-binary people. What is your perspective on that kind of representation in heavy music? I guess, like, maybe how did you feel about it pre-Pulse, and then how do you feel about it after Pulse? Because now you've had so many conversations with other people that share similar experiences.
I think there's always like room for improvement.
Yes.
That's for sure. I do think, not to be overly like positive about it, but I do think we're at quite a good part of the scene, like especially, you know, like people you and I have been around for quite a while. This is like, we're seeing a lot more women in bands. We're seeing a lot more crew. We're seeing a lot more conversations about this. But then you also do have, you know, circumstances like the conference and stuff last month where, you know, we kind of all feel like things are changing.
It's definitely, and, you know, like I say this as like a male, so like, you know, grain of salt there, but like it does feel like it's like one step forward, two steps back.
Yeah.
Anytime there's any kind of like push for inclusion, representation, and you see the wins from that, it feels like there's another kind of expose or another kind of story or another fest lineup that gets people pissed off for all the exact same reasons. And it's like, well, when do things start to kind of, you know, coalesce and everything starts to pull in the right direction? I think we're there. I think it's getting there, but
definitely
it must be difficult to kind of just like, you know, be a woman and be frustrated with that kind of continual conversation.
Yeah, it's definitely something that when I was younger definitely made me a lot more frustrated and angry. It's something now that I just try to kind of, I guess, kind of navigate the best way I can, whether it be having those difficult conversations or highlighting things that maybe other people don't want to do. Sometimes it's weird. Sometimes, you know, people act really weird about this conversation, and sometimes people like go head first into it. So you never really know. And it's also not everyone's responsibility, but at the same time, if you are an active member in the scene, I think it's obvious to all of us to some degree. Like, it's not just about, you know, having a woman on a bill or having one or two bands. It's deeper than that. It's, you know, having really difficult conversations with your friends and kind of holding each other accountable in ways that make people uncomfortable. Reading about things, like watching interviews with women, learning about their experiences, listening to their music, their lyrics, things like that. But, you know, like you still see comments on YouTube and music videos and reels and stuff like that. So there's still definitely things to improve on and a lot more space for it. I think it's hard because people get worried that they get so worried that they're going to do the wrong thing that they prefer to do nothing. And I think that's probably the thing we need to kill the most, is that like one step in the right direction is still a step in the right direction. It's not about being the perfect feminist or the perfect ally. It's about like little everyday details that make a difference, and showing up to shows, like buying merch, buying tickets, like sharing articles, like highlighting creators. It's like thanking your crew as well. Like that was a massive part for me that kind of helped stem Pulse. Is I worked quite a lot closely with bands like Starve, Outsider, things like that, who, even though they're all males in the band, every single person behind the band is a female. And I think it's really important to highlight those people like they did and be like, oh, thanks, you know, to Jess for doing my bookings or things like that, and just making it known that you surround yourself with powerful people and I guess giving them not praise but visibility. Like visibility is a really important issue. Like just letting people know that your crew is not just all male, and that, you know, like little things like if you book a female on a show, or you know your merch girl is female, like how's she getting home? Have you booked her accommodation? Like make sure that every element of it, of the day to day as well as the bigger stuff, is kind of cared for, because it's bigger than that, and it's important. And like paying attention to how the pit maybe operates in your own band and things like that. Like, are people hate moshing? Are people hurting each other? Like, you know, it's not, you know, some people love hate moshing. That's fine. I just mean like, do you know what I mean? It's like little things. It's not making a speech while you're on stage or things like that. It's about every day, no matter who's like looking or who's there.
Yeah, it's the actions over like the words, and really kind of making those small changes to how things operate that will kind of gradually shift things in a more positive direction. And I think like we've kind of talked about this a bit on the pod with people like Beck from Terminal Sleep, Kat from Gravitate, about being a woman on stage allows you to kind of open up a space for other girls in the crowd and punters and women at the show to kind of like project themselves and imagine themselves doing the same thing. It opens up a space of potential and possibility.
Absolutely.
But I mean, it's not just performing, it's being an audio engineer, it's being on the crew, it's being a TM, it's you know, being Candace from Beast Mode, you know what I mean? Like all those sorts of people that make this thing move and operate. So like the more visibility that's there, the more people can see themselves doing it and hopefully do the thing, and then it all kind of snowballs from there.
Absolutely, yeah.
So
I think people really underestimate the power of that. Like it never gets smaller. Like watching Beck on stage is deeply like inspiring and empowering, and it's just like, yeah, I want to be in a band. Like you can't not feel like that as a woman when you're watching it. Like it's impossible not to. And it makes a massive difference. Like watching a band with someone who you can see yourself being is way more important than just, you know, than just being a number on a show. Like it means a lot to the punters.
And that's what, like when we have a conversation like we are now about representation, like that's ultimately what it's about. It's not a quota. It's not ticking something off a list. It's like doing that. It's opening up that potential in that space.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that's incredibly well said.
Thanks for having me on.
You're very welcome. Like I said, I've been wanting to chat with you for a while because I love Pulse. I love the whole idea for the project. I now have copies. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Shout out. So I will be immersing myself in the literature, doing the research, getting the knowledge.
Yeah, there's lots of good advice there from some awesome people.
Yeah, I'm stoked to read it.
No one is safe from your aftermath. I'll bury you in a shallow grave. This fate you burn, the one that you crave. I won't take some fighting back, and you're too blind.
Let's talk about the show. Let's talk about the fest, because that has been taking all of your time and energy for the last few months, I would imagine. You're doing a fundraiser here in Naarm. It's in conjunction with friends of the show, What We Did on the Weekend. Shout out to Jase. How did you get involved with their annual fundraiser show thing?
They asked, actually.
Okay.
Yeah. Jase was, you know, he's obviously done 6 now, so he's done quite a few.
Yeah.
And I think he wanted, you know, he's obviously very clued into the scene. He knows a lot of people in the way that he could kind of tell, you know, what we needed and what conversations were being had. He's raised a lot of money for Beyond Blue in the past, so I think he also wanted to move charities, and so the two things kind of just combined. And he asked if I wanted to collab, and I said yes, and I came in with kind of like a list of conditions, if anything, where I was just like, this band needs to be on, or this needs to happen. And, you know, it was every band needs to not be just all white guys. Like it needs to be a non-male kind of fest, which I think he was like, yeah, that's a given. Like he wasn't like, what? Or anything like that.
Not an unrealistic ask
No.
for Allison from Pulse.
No,
You know what I mean?
exactly. Yeah. And then we just we had like a list of like 30 bands. And honestly, it was mainly just arguing about who we both wanted more. That was kind of the problem. It was like, I want this band for me. And he's like, I want this band for me. So it was, you know, who do we want there? What's going to work with the bill? Like it was no matter what, it was going to be a mixed bill. That was just kind of like a given. And it was, just kind of narrowing it down and then sending out offers. And, you know, with charity shows, it's, you know, you can't offer too much money to everyone because you still need to raise money. But we were very stoked on making sure everyone was paid and meeting what they wanted. So it was always about navigating that and like being within budget of who we can have. And then, we ended up with 8 awesome bands and we're both very, very happy with it. It's been a lot of effort and a lot of background stuff that like obviously I never really had the intention of running shows or having anything to do with them. But like I had a guy come up to me and ask to take what was primarily a male fest and gave me the space and had no issues, nothing, like did not object to anything I said. So like, why the hell would I say no?
Yeah, exactly.
So I was really grateful that he trusted me with it and that he wanted to. Like we've obviously been friends for a while, but friends is different than work.
Totally.
So it was honestly an honor and he's been sick. He's a champion with what he does. So hopefully we can raise some money and hopefully everyone has a nice time and the bands enjoy playing.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a great time. Let's talk about the lineup for a little bit. So like in this discussion of pitching bands, I guess like you eventually settle on Outright as your headliner.
Yeah.
And I was anticipating that they would do something for the 10-year of Avalanche.
Yeah.
So when I saw them on this particular fest lineup, I was like, yeah, that makes sense. Like this is the perfect kind of show for that and the perfect kind of lineup. Do you have a personal connection with Outright? Are you a fan?
I am a fan. Outright is actually one of those bands that I kind of fangirled over for ages. Helena is someone that I wanted in Pulse, but it was not someone I was ready to ask until I felt I was worthy of it. So she's not in the first 2 issues because I was like, I need to meet her. I need to make sure everything is, you know, that I like her as well and that we get along and that she trusts me. I saw Outright at, I think it was Lair Fest.
Okay.
When Life Lair Records did their like 2-weekend festival. And I actually can like still see it in my head. I remember they played a song and I just watched it and I was like, what the hell? Like I was just immediately like, I want to do this. It was also, I think, the first time I 2-stepped.
Sick.
So that was like great. Shout out Outright. Yeah, they were always someone that was like our dream to have on. So honestly, when Jase was like, they're in, I was like, what the hell are you talking about? Like,
that's crazy.
Why are they in? Kind of
Yeah.
thing. Like, what have I done wrong? Like, what have we lied about? Like, did we offer them $10 million or something? And they were stoked. Like, they're honestly like the nicest group of people and they've been so easy to work with. And I was just like, I'm still kind of just like, oh, like it won't happen, but I think they'll be there.
Yeah, they're an incredible live band, and it kind of makes me think of this conversation we were having about like visibility, right? Because like having like, you know, like a woman-fronted hardcore band, but Australian,
Yeah.
you know, they were always in that conversation and they were always present and visible for, you know, maybe when they were a little bit more active back in the day, not so much now, but I mean, they're still incredible live.
They're
I saw
such
them.
an institution.
I saw them at
Amazing.
Cold Day in Brisbane.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, so many high kicks, just so much stage energy.
You can't look anywhere else, honestly.
Yeah.
She's just so powerful.
She had like the netball, like high ponytail, big kicks. So dope.
So tough looking.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
Absolutely awesome.
Yeah, I think like a given choice for a headliner.
I think it was a non-negotiable for Jase. So I think if they said no, we'll just be like, we're done.
Shows off.
Yeah, exactly.
You've also got friends of the show Gravitate on the show. We had Kat on here a couple of weeks ago. She was lovely. Awesome chat. Go check it out. I love Gravitate. I've seen them a bunch.
They're awesome.
We've also had Chris on here as the
Shout out Chris.
the kind of fill-in host whenever Paige.
Really?
Yeah, well, Paige was in Adelaide for like a week or two, helping a friend of ours get her side hustle business off the ground. So like, I normally like when she can't do the show for like our weekly show, I will just do it solo,
Yeah.
and like it's a bit of a weird vibe because I'm kind of just like talking to myself.
Yeah.
And I guess like most YouTubers are fine with that, but like the
fair.
podcast is very much like a dialogue. So when I don't have anyone to bounce off, I'm kind of like, all right, well, this next song's good. So
Trust me.
listen to it. Sick. So like I hit him up and I was like, hey, do you want to come in and just like be the other host for a bit? So I think we did 2 episodes together. But yeah.
Awesome. He's down for anything.
Yeah, love Chris. He's helped out with the show a bunch. Photos. He's filmed some video stuff for me.
Yeah.
Like just a super, super, super fun guy. And much like you, like likes to give back to the scene. Like we've talked about, you know, him like picking up skills from working other people's shows and doing, you know, fill-in stuff for other people's bands and then jumping on tours and just like he's someone who's like very hungry to learn and like figure out what he's doing. So yeah, love Gravitate.
Awesome.
Stoked that they're on
Love
the lineup.
Paul, love Cat, love them all.
Love the whole band. They're all great. I think they've got some new stuff in the works. Kat was kind of teasing it out on our episode.
I was like, I messaged her. I was like, cleans.
I know what they're working on, thanks to Chris, but I won't spoil it. But it is dope. So keep your ears peeled for that. The rest of the lineup, I'm just going to run through them, and we can kind of bounce off. So you've got Stressed, and then Identity Error, who I've only seen once, supporting Terminal Sleep, but they're incredible.
Awesome.
Ran into the drummer Kat at Big Sound. She was roaming around, so shout out Kat. She's sick.
She's a great.
Slowburn.
Yeah.
I'm not terribly familiar with Slowburn, but you sent me through a little playlist that you put together.
Yeah.
The Slowburn material is sick.
Yeah, they're awesome. They kind of like a few members from Anticline. I'm not sure if you remember.
Name sounds familiar,
yeah. And then I think the bass, I'm not sure if he plays bass guitar, but Darcy from Starve is also in in Slowburn,
Yeah, sick.
So it's kind of like all of like the veterans have kind of joined together, but they're awesome. And
like a low-key
awesome.
supergroup type
exactly.
deal.
Very
Love
much
that.
so, yeah. So they're great.
Sick. And then...
Good for mosh.
Good for moshing. It definitely gave me that vibe. I was like, this is like heavy mosh music.
Yeah.
And I'm about it.
Yeah.
And then the final 2, you've got Goethe and Takoba.
Yes. Yeah. I think it's both of their first Melbourne shows.
I think so.
From memory. Yeah, we were trying to stalk, but Takoba is one of those awesome bands that's only on Bandcamp. So that's why they're not in the playlist.
Respect.
I was like, I re-downloaded Bandcamp. I was like,
yeah.
Yeah, so it should be good. Honestly, really excited to see them for the first time. Yeah. Love them.
We've talked about it a bunch on the pod with different guests, but like what I appreciate about the lineup so much is like even though they're all, you know, tangentially connected as like heavy bands, like none of them really sound the same.
Yeah.
And like a mixed bill is like so good and so underrated. Like the worst thing is rocking up to a show and being like, cool, now I have to sit through 8 bands that sound exactly the same.
Metalcore bands.
Yeah, like done so many of those and it's rough. So like, having things mixed is definitely the way to go. Was that something for you and Jase, like in discussion, where you like, we need to have things mixed up a little bit?
Yeah, it was, if anything, it was like, how do we make this heavier? Like, how do we, like, out of, if there were, you know, once a few of them were kind of locked in, it was like, okay, you know, if this one's left, like, which one's heavier? And we kind of always working towards that. For me, it was always about mosh. I was like, I need like quite a lot of mosh bands. Like, it's honestly my favorite part of shows, and I like people enjoying a good mosh. So I was like, you know, we need to make sure that we have one where people can kind of let loose and have a good day. And it was just kind of about like also having people that we admire and people that we like, that we know would gel well and enjoy each other's company, but also bringing something new. We want, like, especially with, you know, I think it's, I don't know how to, Goethe? What did you say?
Goethe.
Goethe. Thank you.
He's a German poet.
That's what I thought, but I'd never heard it pronounced.
He's a famous poet from the Romantic period.
I'll read that on the way.
I know this thanks to my honours degree.
Yeah, I was going to say.
And my professor was like a German language professor, but then also had like a degree in philosophy and literature. And he like gave me Goethe to read. So like when I first looked at it, I was like, Goethe? Like, is that how you say it? Like, I don't know. The Australian like bogan in me kicked in and was like, Goethe? Is that how you say it? And
yeah.
like, Goethe is how you say it. I was like, okay, cool. That's not intuitive at all.
No.
So
we don't like intuitive, no.
Yeah.
They've not been here before, so we wanted to bring something new as well that people, you know, sometimes you go to shows and you're like, God damn, I've seen this band 5 times this year. So
seeing something new is exciting.
Absolutely.
And like their demo rips.
So good.
It's sick. So
good.
Yeah, I listened to that a couple of months ago when it came out and I was like, I know this band isn't from Victoria, but I was like, when they come through, I should check them out. So yeah, stoked.
Hopefully see you there.
I mean, I want to be there. Let's talk about some of the other stuff that's going on because it's not just bands. You've got a raffle, you've got speakers, you've got stalls. I'm guessing from the Pulse angle, there's an incentive for you to kind of have other stuff there that isn't just music focused. Yeah. So what was the conversation with Jase about that and how did you kind of pick all of that stuff?
The raffle is kind of Jase's domain. Okay. He's a big raffle guy.
Yep. I could see that being his thing.
Yeah, so, and he's kind of done it in the past with each one. Like he kind of knows, you know, how to kind of do the background, like the back of house, I guess. I was a bit like, how do you, like, I don't want to ask people
how
for
does
money.
This work?
Yeah, like I feel weird asking people for money. But we're doing it like old school football where you like, you get the little booklet and you can either buy a full booklet or like, you get
little tickets.
Yeah, so we're just doing it that way.
And it's not like a meat tray or something, I imagine. It's probably something.
No, it's actually like crazy. Like we've had quite a few people. Someone also donated like a toaster and a kettle, which was random. I was like, this is old school raffle shit.
Incredible.
Yeah, I was like, I want the kettle. Yeah. But yeah, we've had like, we just kind of have a spreadsheet and we just keep adding to it. Thankfully, quite a lot of creators have given like vouchers and some people are doing designs that'll be printed and
that's sick.
Yeah, quite a few vouchers. Obviously, there's like the Stay Gold card and the Ollie's silver card or whatever where you get like free entry to Stay Gold for a year and shit like that.
That's sick.
So
there's always shows on there.
A lot of people are
keen on that.
Hoping for that one.
Yeah,
but we're only one winner. But yeah, so we'll just be drawing the raffle, I think, between a few of the bands. And then, yeah, you just buy like, I think it's $2 tickets and then 3 for $5 or something.
Okay.
So super cheap, just trying to like honestly raise as much money as we can. Yeah, so hopefully people keep donating. We're still taking, we're not going to say no to anything, but it's just waiting for more and more. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know where we're going to store it all, but we'll figure it out.
That's a future Allison problem.
Yeah, amen. Yeah, but everyone's been really generous. It's honestly, it still blows me away. Like he's obviously done it for quite a few years and he's like, oh yeah, this is normal. People love raffles. But for me, I'm like, what the hell?
People do love a raffle.
People love giving.
Yeah.
It's so surprising.
We, when Paige and I were living in Queensland, we were living on the Gold Coast and her grandparents would always come down to visit and they wanted to go to this specific pub in Cooley and we would go there and her grandmother, Lorraine, would always go for the raffle.
Amazing.
And I remember like one time we went there for dinner, we were just having, you know, like some palmies and having a beer or whatever. And then she just won the meat tray and she's like, here you go. And I was like,
meat tray's kind of dope.
Yeah. I was like, I mean, I didn't expect.
How big?
Like big.
Ooh.
Talking like a couple steaks, a couple snags.
Ooh.
Yeah.
That's all right.
And I mean, like, I grew up in a country town. So like the raffle at the pub is like a rite of passage.
Yeah.
So like I wasn't prepared for it, but I was definitely chuffed. Of like, I'm like, we won the fucking meat tray. Like that's sick.
Everyone's like, you know, bowing to you as you leave.
As you walk out, slow clap. Beautiful. No, I love the raffle.
We should do a meat tray. Meat tray that's been in Stay Gold for 12 hours.
Maybe not. Maybe not. I think we should probably also talk about the charity for the fundraiser because that is ultimately kind of the main impetus for it. You mentioned that previously Jase had been doing stuff for Beyond Blue.
Yeah.
This particular fundraiser is for Refuge Victoria.
Yeah.
Was that something that you helped with the choice of charity? Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you talk to me a little bit about that?
Yeah, he just he said that he mentioned that he wanted a different charity and he wasn't going to do Beyond Blue, and I was like, "Yep, can I pick the charity?" And I was like, "Yeah." He gave me a list of like 2 or 3 that he'd been looking at. And then I just kind of did my research thing. It was like
found all the knowledge, read all the pieces.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to make sure you can go on like charity ratings and stuff online. I wanted to make sure that it wasn't one that kept all of its proceeds. You can kind of see what their annual kind of intake is and what they do with it, and they actually give the money back, which was awesome. So they give money to women who've been displaced from family violence, and they get them like resources or housing and things like that on top of what they already do. But a lot of it goes straight to the women, straight to people who've been like who are actually experiencing homelessness from DV and things like that. So it was just kind of narrowing it down and finding a list. And honestly, they've been kind of insane. Like, they're so sweet, they're so nice. We sent them like a list of all the bands playing with like a music video, and they were just like, "Oh my God, this is awesome." And we were kind of expecting them to come back and be like,
"What the fuck is this?
Terrifying." Yeah. And now they're awesome. Like, they call us on the phone, like you'll send them an email and they'll give you a call. And we just kind of wanted to know that it was okay. We were raising money, and then it was all their idea. They were like, "We'll send a speaker down. Do you want someone to talk on the day, like talk about the charity or have someone present?" And we were like, whatever you want to do, like is more than we could ever imagine. So the fact that they're being so involved is honestly so surprising but amazing. And they've given us like a link, and which I can send you as well.
Please do.
Like a link and like all the flyers, and they sent us like their assets straight away, and like they reply to emails and they give calls. And
love that. Love
honestly,
people who reply to emails.
Yeah.
Big thing.
Hey man.
It's a small thing, but it's a big thing.
It's a massive thing.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I think that's definitely a worthwhile charity, a worthwhile cause. And just stoked to know that they're stoked to be involved.
Yeah.
Like it'd be very easy to be like, raise money for us, and then like
just transfer me.
Yeah, just transfer when you're done.
Yeah.
But it's not like that.
Yeah, they were very proactive. And we also wanted to even though Australia, it's like quite a few bands are Australia wide, we wanted to kind of keep it kind of grassroots in our level. So we made sure that we picked one that like was in Victoria and had their headquarters in Victoria, and helped Victorian women. So they're amazing. I cannot, if anyone else wants to do a charity show, I deeply recommend them.
Highly recommended. Beautiful.
Yeah, they're amazing.
So, shout outs. Do you have shows, things to shout out, anything you want to add at the end of the show?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
I just wanted to mention a few upcoming shows for some of the homies in Pulse as well.
Yeah, hell yeah.
Stressed have a hardcore fest in South Australia on December 7th, which is all Adelaide bands.
Sick.
That's going to be wicked. Identity Era are playing Body Prison's headliner show in December, I think the 21st.
Okay.
Slowburn are supporting Signals at the end of October. I should have said that one. At the end of October, which will probably be done now.
Yes.
Pest Control are playing in Adelaide at the end of November with the Veins. Volatile Ways are doing a speed show, and they're also doing the Parramatta Heavy show, which is run by Honey Hardcore, which is awesome.
Sick.
Terminal Sleep are supporting Frenzal Rom, which is crazy.
That is wild.
Yeah, literally.
I couldn't believe it when I saw that come through.
I was like, is this a cover band?
But I mean, I've interviewed some of the guys in Frenzal before, and like, they're sick and like super like cool guys. And I would imagine that they've seen, the hype around Terminal Sleep and just how fucking sick they are.
Your episode. Crazy.
Yeah.
Viral.
It's gone nuts. Almost at 10K, which is kind of stupid.
I was like, this is insane.
I'm not taking any credit for that. That's purely all Beck.
No, you can't. It was a good interview.
And the fact that she's just like an interesting person, and I think people love terminal sleep and they want to know more about them. So most of the comments are like people from Europe and America being like, she's great. When will they play here? And I was like,
100%.
I don't know, buddy. They're coming soon. Like, I don't know. But yeah.
That's awesome.
So no, I'm not surprised.
Yeah.
But also surprised.
Yeah. I was like, oh my God.
On the Frenzal support. It's
Yeah,
going to
good
be a
on
sick
it.
show.
Yeah, it is.
So many like 50-year-old punkers are going to be like, what the fuck is going on?
That girl's angry.
She pissed.
Absolutely. I think I was just also going to mention that Vilify are doing the Halloween Emo Never Sleeps tour,
Sick.
which will be awesome. Party time. Neptura Art Tash has an art show in November, at the end of November. And Bloom have just announced their Miss May I USA tour, which is Emily for doing behind the scenes.
Oh.
So, yeah, just wanted to shout out all of those. Go to a show. Also come to our show, but
go to other shows.
Yeah, if
more
you're in
importantly, just
South
go to
Australia
shows.
or Brisbane or whatever. Definitely, there's a lot going on and a lot of people playing a lot of shows. So.
Yeah, sick. I will probably find most of the like show flyers for all of that, and I will throw those up. I can put
quick draw.
I can put links in the description, and then if I can't find anything, I will hit you up and be like, Allison, give me the plug. Where are the details?
Did you make this up? Yeah.
But yeah, I will put. No, that's all good. I will put links down for everyone to go and check those out. Please do.
Thank you.
Awesome. Well, I think that's pretty much all of the points that I wanted to touch on, unless you have another secret project that you're working on that we can kind of promo for you. But
not anything that I think I'm allowed.
You sound very busy. You sound like you're doing lots of stuff.
I'm very busy. Yeah. Why do we do this to ourselves?
Oh, mate, I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm still searching for that answer.
Yeah.
As I commit myself to like 3 interviews this week.
Oh my God.
You're the first of 3, so thank you.
Hopefully not this evening.
No. Throughout the week.
Thank God.
But I was saying to Paige before when I was like getting ready, I was like, I looked at my calendar and realized that I had 6 interviews for the podcast in 2 weeks.
Oh my God.
Which is kind of crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of like aside. Like this isn't the hard part.
No.
Hopefully.
No. This is the easy part. No, like we kind of talked about, like it's the research and the prep and making sure that, I've listened to the albums and that I have like thoughts and feelings about them. I'm not just like, tell me about your album because I haven't listened to it. You know what I mean?
Thankfully, you didn't have to listen to any of my music.
I mean, I would. Send me your music. I don't care. I'll listen to it. Allison, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you.
This has been awesome. I will put links in the show description for Pulse, for the fest, for Refuge Victoria, all the things that we've spoken about. I will put in the description for people to check out. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure. I'm sorry for my little coughs before.
That's okay. The magic of editing. We'll edit all of that out. It'll be beautiful.
Yeah, thank you for having me on to talk about the fest. It's been a pleasure. It's nice to meet you in person again.
Yeah, no, this has been sick. Thank you so much. Subscribe now to the Pitch of Discontent Patreon to receive access to extended cuts of our bonus episodes, as well as exclusive behind-the-scenes content, monthly Patreon-only episodes, member-only votes, the TPD community chat, and much more. Go now to patreon.com/TPDpod and join for as little as $5 a month. That link again is patreon.com/TPDpod. Thanks for watching the show.